Hello, everybody. Take two. This is Louise Edington, the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Centaurs and, in particular, Chariklo, and to give you some thoughts and insights I've had about what's happening in the world right now. But I won't go into too much detail. Some of it will refer to things we've been talking about in the videos I'm doing with Kathy Beale and Andy Brewer, and we've been looking at the 6-degree Leo mark where Mars has just stationed retrograde. And I have a lot of thoughts on this and about kind of where it's going and what's coming up in the next about 4 years, really, because it's clear we are in a major time of transformation and turmoil, not just in the United States, but globally. Just this weekend, Assad's regime has fallen and Assad has fled Syria. Georgia is rising up against the Russians in the country of Georgia, that is, not the state. Romania is kind of having this big election battle between autocracy and democracy. South Korea as well. The leader of South Korea initiated martial law, and then it was overturned within hours by the people. The people seem to be rising up in general in many, many places. And so, we're in this kind of major time. And I know most of my audience is in the US, but this is all connected. Everything is connected here. And so, I'm continuing to do my research about what's going on in the world. I'm actually listening to a podcast right now about an ex-CIA agent, and he is connecting a lot of the dots too. And that's on the podcast called, um, and I promise this does relate to what I'm talking about. This is on the Diary of a CEO podcast, which is really very good. He has great guests on talking about all kinds of subjects. But anyway, first of all, the Centaurs. Okay. And before I dive in, quickly ask you to subscribe, leave me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. Welcome to the many new subscribers. Love having you here. This one might get a little bit complex in astrology, and I know you're not all astrologers, but I really invite you to just listen to the message overall before I share the charts and just think of dates and times. And I will say what the degrees are and what the sign names are. Somebody asked me if I could add a table when I share the charts. That's kind of really hard to do. It's really easy to Google the symbols for astrology. So, if you Google, you can usually find a table of this symbol is Gemini, this symbol is Pluto, and so on and so forth. Or my book, The Complete Guide to Astrology, has tables in the back. There's easy ways to find what the symbols are if you want to learn more, that is. If otherwise, if you're just here to hear about where we're going and what's happening in the world and in your life, then just listen to the message. That's fine too. So the Centaurs. The Centaurs were first discovered with Chiron. Most people know about Chiron now, the wounded healer. Chiron was discovered in 1977 and followed by Pholus and then Nessus. Okay, so, they were 1992, Pholus was discovered. Nessus was discovered in 1993. And then I believe the fourth one was Chariklo. I don't think there was one between 1994 and 1997. Now, I have interviewed Melanie Reinhardt a couple of times on my YouTube channel. You can find them under the Tea with Louise podcast. She has kind of done most research with centaurs. So you can go and read her website. I'm going to put it in the link. and also going to talk a little bit about what she said. So, okay. So Chiron was first discovered on November the 1st, 77 at 10 a.m. in Pasadena. And what's interesting, really, astronomically, is that it didn't fit into any existing categories of objects. So as Chiron has been called a comet, an asteroid, a planetoid. It still holds dual classification as a comet and a minor planet. Most of the time, it's positioned between Saturn and Uranus, but as a body that crosses the orbits of other bodies, it can at times be closer in than Saturn and at others further out than Uranus. Chiron has a cometary tail, which can reach 300,000 kilometers in length. And this is reading from Melanie's site, by the way, so I want to give her the kind of credit for that. And this tail appears to switch on and off. And so times the tail can be seen and at others not. So once it was discovered, its appearance was then noted going on photographic plates going back as far as the late 1800s. So it had been there all along, but not noticed. But we do find that in astrology, we do find that when these beings, planetary beings, come into our consciousness, they start to, their influence, let's say, is felt. So Chiron, most people know a bit about Chiron, symbolizes that which is hidden, by virtue of being so obvious that we don't actually see it. So Chiron is very small, and it can describe these things that being so small may seem insignificant, but in actuality are powerful. In keeping with its continual reclassification, Chiron's meaning resists categorization and defies description, is what she said. Most people call Chiron the wounded healer, and I do think it has that element because Chiron's myth was that he was wounded and had this wound that would not heal until he gave up his immortality to rescue Prometheus who was being punished for bringing the fire of the gods down to humans. And so he has that element, but he's also like this scratch that you cannot itch. But also it's where the light gets in to do the healing. There's a lot more I could say, but we're moving on to Chariklo. Anyway, so like Chiron, these minor planets or centaurs or whatever you want to call them, they all cross over the orbital paths of one or more of other bodies, okay, between Jupiter and Pluto. And they all have very elliptical orbits, which means they go way out sometimes, and sometimes they're closer to Earth. So they speed through some signs, and they whiz around the narrower part of the ellipse sometimes, while taking much longer to transit signs on the long sides in between those points. So it's just Melanie, in some of her presentations, has shown an image of the centaurs that I'm sure you can Google. I just don't want to baffle you too much, but now there's been many centaurs discovered, and their patterns, if you put them all on a map, create this tangled web of chaos. Now, I always find that interesting because we are said to have come from chaos, the dream time, the amniotic fluid, the oceans, whatever. We are kind of made from this cosmic soup, all right? So their whole patterns is very kind of chaotic, all right? Now then, Melanie said that Chiron's discovery at this pivotal time in our history, because we all know we are at this major transition in so many ways, reflects a process of innovation and change by quantum leap, as well as technological changes in consciousness, belief, behavior, and lifestyle. In this sense, Chiron bridges is often being called the bridge, okay, between the realms of Uranus, radical change, revolution, overturning of old collective structures, and Saturn, Lord of manifestation and preserver of existing forms and boundaries. By weaving both impulses into a higher synthesis, more uniquely personal than either planet, Chiron's process can help us individuate beyond the various pressures of the collective, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I'm not going to go way more deeply into Chiron because I do want to move on to his wife. But, you know, he's related to death and transition, often related to exile, where we feel we are aliens in this world. I have Chiron in Aquarius, so I feel that one. Chiron and disability, medicine and music he's related to, and rites of passage. Most people now, if you're vaguely aware of astrology, are aware of the Chiron return, which happens around the age of 51, 52, 50, 51, 52, depending on its orbit. Okay, and it's quite often a threshold as well, turning to that age. So just quickly, some other classic Chiron themes: unhealable wound, a situation we cannot escape, but it's also often where we kind of go to help others so that we heal ourselves. It's kind of that physician heal thyself kind of energy. Chiron can also depict a brilliance, which stands out and defines a person. And anyway, so all of that. Then we had Pholus discovered in 1992. And Pholus really seems to be one where a small event sets off a chain reaction. So, you know, it's her words for it is the lid comes off, and it's said to be cause and effect, but also can bring tower moments because of lack of integrity or something that was done earlier on. And so, you know, I'm not going to, I'll give you the link in the description. The third centaur was Nessus. The buck stops here is Melanie's term. Nessus definitely is to do with the abuse of power and has ancestral implications. I've talked about it often. It seems that Nessus brings opportunities to understand and release deep patterns of helplessness, being taken advantage of and being oppressed. So, yeah, we can see that Nessus is in Pisces and has been very active lately, and we're seeing so many abuses of power in the collective, but we're also finding it in our own lives, you know, where people have abused their power and or where the culture we were brought up in abused its power, and so on and so forth. So we're at this amazing time. I've talked about it with what's his name? Steve Judd, when we did a joint vlog together about this amazing time we're in, where our consciousness is rising up. But then in 1997, we had Chariklo. Chariklo was discovered. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the discovery of Chariklo, then I'm going to share her chart and say why I think it's really relevant now. So Chariklo was Chiron's wife. Not much known about her in myths. Kelly Hunter, again, I'll post this link in the description. Her website is heliostar.com. She wrote a lovely piece that Melanie shares on her website about Chariklo's love story. Now, Chariklo is called a centaur astrologically, but she was actually a nymph in the myth, and she has this shape-shifting quality. She's very like a chimera, if you like. So, you know, she was a nymph, and she M. Kelly Hunter posited, because this is just how she feels into her. Kelly works very like I do, kind of talks to these beings. Okay, so, you know, she could read the ripples in the water and the underlying patterns highlighted by sunlight, moonlight, and starlight, and so on and so forth. But then one day she saw a most noble creature galloping across the hill. She'd never seen this being before. He moved like a horse, yet had the torso of a human, or so she thought. She rarely saw people, but heard about them. And yes, this one looked like a man horse, a centaur. Rumor told that they lived in caves higher up on the hills. And this, she was spellbound by this being. She and of course Chiron was not quite like the other centaurs. He had a higher intelligence. Some images depict Chiron as having front legs of a human and back legs of a horse, whereas all the other raucous Chirons who centaurs had the whole bottom half as a horse. Okay, and so Chiron was, you know, a shaman, a medicine man, taught the gods. He was an archer in the myth, so he's definitely kind of not your ordinary centaur. Anyway, so Kelly Hunter says, you know, they looked at each other and she flicked her tail and disappeared into the water and swam away, but she could feel his eyes follow her and she couldn't forget about him. And then after some time, she saw the centaur step out from a stand of trees, and there were many more centaurs in the territory, but this one was notable. He was a noble son of Saturn. Anyway, they fell in love, and the love and companionship grew, and she lived in the waters and he in the hills. They were made of different elements, she of water and air, he of earth and fire. She felt a growing desire to be with him. And so, because she was a shapeshifter, she stepped out of the water onto the riverbank and became a centaur woman and joined Chiron in his life. And long story short, again, I'll post the link in the description. He was a master healer. He could not heal himself. So in her deep love and compassion, Chariklo tended to him. And after 900 years or so, it said, Zeus gave permission to give up his life and be lifted up into the sky. And Chariklo helped Chiron in his shapeshift into his star body to find his place amongst the constellations. After that, she retired back into the waters, once again clothed in her mermaid body. She swam the long rivers down to the sea and made her home amongst coral reefs surrounding distant islands. By night, she would gaze upon Chiron's stellar form, and by day, she showed sea stars how to arrange themselves on the sandy sea floor to reflect constellations in the heavens. And excuse my croakiness, I am almost over this awful bug I've had, but I'm still croaky. So you get the feel of Chariklo. Her name literally means grace spinner or spinner of grace. Melanie Reinhardt has found that she shows up in the charts strongly of those who kind of have a midwifing quality, often in, say, people who accompany a spouse to their death and help them pass from one side to the other, also in birthing. In my own experience, Chariklo was discovered on the very day I found out that my father was had terminal cancer in 1997. It's okay, you know, I've long processed this. And that year, so we found out he had glioblastoma and would probably not last out the year. So we decided to get married, my husband and I. So we got married. We also decided to try for a baby. And by the time we got married, I was already pregnant. I gave birth on October. I gave birth on October November the 2nd, 1997, and my dad died on October the 1st, 1997. So Chariklo's discovery really launched this year of transitions, life transitions of birth and death and cosmic doulaship. So, wow, right? I actually personally discovered Chariklo exactly on my Chariklo return, which we all have at age 62, where without knowing, I picked the word grace, and her name means spinner of grace in the Greek, for my word of the year. You cannot make this stuff up sometimes. So I'm going to keep shuffling the cards because I feel like the cards want to tell me something while we look at this, but I want to show you her beautiful discovery chart. I've shared it before. She was discovered on February the 15th, 1997, and it was a very significant year. Okay. It was the year Princess Diana died, right? It was also the year after her discovery that the Chemical Weapons Convention came into force in April. It was the year that the British lease on Hong Kong expired and China took over. It was also the year that scientists announced the first human stem cells using tissue taken from aborted embryos. Then Princess Diana died. It was also the year that Apple Computers named Steve Jobs as the interim CEO. It was also there was a UN climate conference in Kyoto. I think that may have been the first. It was also the Hong Kong began slaughtering all its chickens that year to prevent bird flu. Okay. Other things about 1997 is that this was the year that Putin in Russia was rising through the ranks. He was not actually, taking into power at that point, but in 1996, he moved to Moscow. He joined the presidential staff as deputy to Borodin, who was the Kremlin's chief administrator, and he started to move up administrative positions until Yeltsin made him the director of the SFB, which is the KGB's successor, because he was KGB. And then he became secretary of the influential Security Council and was appointed prime minister in 1999. So you could really see that Putin's rise was seeded at this time as well. Also, one other thing that we have mentioned in those videos, it was the one Kathy and I did alone because Andy was sick. The Foundations of Geopolitics by Alexander Dugin was published in 1997, and it has a significant influence with the Russian military, police forces, foreign policy elites, and has been used as a textbook in the general staff of the Russian military. So I just want you to know that, obviously China was very active that year because it took over Hong Kong. Things were changing. Putin was rising up. This book was published by Dugin, which he's called Putin's Brain, and the book has been called Putin's Playbook. Okay. And so we can see all these stories playing out right now. This is my point. Okay. Where we're getting to. So this is her beautiful discovery chart. Chariklo was discovered on February the 15th at 6 Leo, where Mars just stationed retrograde. Now you can see that we have this beautiful pattern, Star of David, whatever you want to call the pattern, that links the Gemini moon and also links Saturn in Aries. Also links, look at all of this in Aquarius, where Pluto has just moved to, by the way. So Jupiter, Uranus, Ceres, exactly opposite, Mercury there. And so we can see a lot of this going on right now. And the nodes of the USA are 6 Leo Aquarius, by the way. Then we have over here, Pluto in Sagittarius and Mars in Libra. Now, the first thing to mention is that this is all in fire and air signs. And remember that she is both water and air, Chariklo, according to M. Kelly Hunter's lovely piece that she wrote. And I kind of do think she is. She's water and air, really. She's that very shimmery, kind of shape-shifty kind of energy. She is not solid, earthly, kind of physical energy. But the only water we have in the chart is her husband, Chiron, which is at 2 degrees Scorpio, which is, I think, quite significant right now. And if we're the only Earth we have are some of the asteroids, where we have Juno over here in sacred contracts in Taurus, Neptune and Pallas Athena were finishing their journey in Capricorn, and then Sedna, which is she's got a huge orbit, but she's significant at the moment, so I've left them in. There is one other water though, and that's the South Node in Pisces. Now I'm going to look to the transits to this chart for some time, but I want you to note these degrees, the 6 Leo and Aquarius. I already mentioned that that is the nodes of the USA's chart, and the USA is obviously going through a major transformation in so many ways. So, but look at this degree, 6 degrees Aquarius, or Leo, right? Mainly Aquarius, but I'm going to talk about a few things. 1781, which was the year that Uranus was discovered. So in the discovery chart of Uranus, Pluto was at 6 degrees Aquarius. Whoa. Okay. And he's in 1782, there was some aspects at that 6 Aquarius as we settled into this new discovery from our culture's perspective of Uranus, always there, of course. And yes, I know some cultures have ancient temples to Uranus and some of these beings, but we really don't know what they believed in. I'm talking about this current consciousness that we're in. Okay, and then on January the 28th, Mercury joined at that degree too. Then in 1783, January again, you can see that Mercury joined Pluto again at 7, and Venus and Pluto just met at 7, so just past the 6. Fast forward, 1992, if you remember, that was the discovery of Centaur Pholus. But on January the 22nd, 1992, Chiron moved within Saturn's orbit. So he moved within the orbit of the visible by naked eye planets that were the outer limits of consciousness of our current state of consciousness as humans. Okay. At 6 degrees Leo, Chiron moved within Saturn's orbit. And then 5 years later, his wife was discovered by astronomers on February 15th, 1997. I kind of always feel as if Chiron was bringing his wife in to us because, she was needed at this time. So then some other times, March the 6th, 2022, I did mention a 0 area Aquarius because that's another hot degree. It's where Pluto is now. But then on March 6th, 2022, Chariklo was opposite her discovery point. I knew of her at this point. So she kind of had her full moon in 2022. Then earlier this year, we had a Venus, the last Venus-Mars conjunction was at 6 Aquarius, opposite the Chariklo discovery point and conjunct where Ceres was on that discovery point. Moving forward, February the 28th, 2027, Pluto will return to where he was when he was discovered, when Uranus was discovered, on the south node of the USA. But also, I want you to see this degree, 6 degrees 9 minutes. Mars just stationed retrograde at 6 degrees 10 minutes, right? So January the 11th and January 27th, Mars and the Sun will meet Pluto in 2028. And then also in 2028, we're going to have some other shifts of energy in Aquarius. So I think those two first dates are most significant, especially because we've just had Mars station retrograde. Oh, that's a lot, I know. So let me show you a chart. Okay, again, with the transits. Please just listen to the words if you don't get all of that. Sorry about that. Oops, I may have to trim that bit out. Okay, so Mars, we're on December the 8th. Mars stationed retrograde, December the 6th at 6:33 p.m. Look at this. Okay. 6:04 was her discovery degree. Mars went over Chariklo's discovery degree and now is going retrograde. And this was opposing Ceres, as I mentioned, but really also opposing Uranus, Jupiter, Mercury, all there. But look at this as well. Chiron now, or when Mars station, is at 14 Aquarius and is coming up to conjunct Venus, where she was in the discovery chart. And now there's a lot of other things too I want to talk about. But I'm going to mention, I need to add one planet back in, or one minor body. So there's so much going on. And while I find this, I will say that I think these new bodies have been discovered by us to bring into consciousness this immense shift that we are experiencing, right? They are not here for necessarily for personal use. I don't really usually look at these slower, newer discovered bodies in personal readings with clients. But Haumea, who I've written a whole article on, and we've got this Pluto Haumea ongoing square right through till 2028 again. Haumea is now at 2 degrees Scorpio and keeps going back and forth over where Chiron was on the discovery date of Chariklo. Okay. And so, that's activated, but even more, the South Node by transit has just been going over where Mars was and Haumea was in Chariklo's discovery chart. We've had all these eclipses. We also had an eclipse conjunct where Pholus was then. Remember, he's one of those centaurs. There's other centaurs I could add, but this is more than enough, right? Whoa. And that also means, of course, that the North Node has been going over the Saturn in the discovery chart. And I'm going to step back and explain some of this in a minute. And, well, there's a lot more. Okay, so but I do want to point out one thing to you. But first, I'm just going to go back to this chart. Again, if we look at the characters here, so first I talked about the elements, fire and air. We have Mars, one of the major players here, Saturn, Mars, Pluto, Ceres, Saturn, and the Moon. we've got an even distribution, I would say, of masculine and feminine there, because I think Pluto is really is a feminine sign. So Mars, masculine, action, yang energy. Saturn, there is, I think of Saturn as quite masculine energy, or it's the patriarchy in many ways. These two are exactly opposing each other. But then we have Pluto, which I think is now a feminine energy opposing the moon. Moon and Pluto, mother, grandmother, in many ways, opposing each other, looking in to find out, bring in new truth, new experiences, new understanding. And then Ceres, who I think is a actual personal planet, personally. I'm going to get my book written, got to. And Ceres is the great mother. And, all of these things are lining up right now. I think Chariklo came in with the Centaurs to heal and take us into this new paradigm in so many ways. Okay, so back to where we are now. I just want to show you some things that are coming up. So the transiting north nodes or nodes are going to move back into Pisces and Virgo very soon. So bear with me. I'm just going to say conjunct the South Node. On January the 16th, coming up, right at 5 days after the nodes move signs, the North Node by transit is on the South Node of the Discovery chart of Chariklo. That's a reverse nodal return. Now, remember, I said that Chariklo had had her full moon opposition. Look at this point on this day. Ceres is coming up to meet Chariklo by transit, and Ceres is conjunct the Venus there. This chart is lit up like a Christmas tree in so many ways, right? Okay. But then as well, by, we've also got, and just please, don't get too baffled. I'm just kind of trying to express the immensity of this time. Neptune has gestation direct as I record this. Okay. And Neptune and the transiting North Node are going to meet on February the 7th, still conjunct the South Node of Pisces. Then we're going to start having eclipses in Pisces and Virgo as well over the next couple of years. Well, 19 months. And we've actually already had one. So we actually had a 23 Virgo on 25 Pisces on September the 18th. But we've got all the nodes coming up. And this really kind of, on September the 21st, 2025, we have an eclipse on the North Node of the Discovery chart of Chariklo, with Mercury right on that Mars. Oh my God, this is just like, this is, I keep saying the patriarchy is, well, it is. It's just, whoa, okay. And then by that point, Mars is starting to come up to a conjunction with Haumea. He's had his retrograde, gone back over the discovery point of Chariklo, then over the North Node, and then to Chiron. We are in this time where the planets, or these weird planetary bodies that nobody knows what to do with, really, in the astronomy world, are bringing in this immense time of opportunity for healing. Now, there's one other thing I want to mention about Chariklo, actually, I forgot to mention, is that they've found now that she has a ring system around her. Okay. So, the James Webb telescope spied rings around Chariklo, revealing strong evidence for water ice in her. Okay, so, you know, that was in either late 2022 or 2023. I don't know when they were actually spotted. So, you know, planets usually have rings. So what is she bringing in? What's her message? I always think of Chariklo as helping us to weave and spin a new story collectively as people. Just to go back to her discovery chart, this is where she was headed. She set the seeds in her discovery, came around as we are moving at some point into the age of Aquarius, or this new paradigm we undoubtedly are moving into. She is coming in, and now she is speaking loudly because she is in Aquarius. She had her opposition. Now she's going over all of these energies. You can see by September the 21st, Chariklo is at 18 degrees. Again, I'm actually going to try and give you some other dates. And then I really want to leap ahead again to that 2028 time. So again, 2025, she is conjunct Vesta then. Oh, sorry. Okay. This is just astounding to me. So she'll be conjunct Vesta in a flame, also the state often, okay? And then that happens a couple of times, but then she is going to conjunct the 26-degree sun of her discovery chart, which is where the US moon is, where it's at 27 degrees, right? 2026, she has a 62-year orbit, remember, so she goes back and forth. So into 2027, when Pluto's coming up and hitting all these degrees too. Okay, so then right through 2027, she keeps going back and forth over that sun. And then moves into the sign of Pisces, right? So we've got to the end of 2027, Chariklo doing her healing business. And again, a lot of it hits the USA, and a lot of it is really activated by this Mars retrograde. So this is huge. By that point, Neptune is going to start hitting this Saturn because it's moved into Aries. Saturn, it will have had a Saturn return, basically. The discovery chart will have had a Saturn return as well, which is another major transition. By that point, Uranus has been going over the moon in the discovery chart. So many big things happening. I could go on and on. I'm sure you can all see other things, but it's just, I think she is key. And I think this pattern that she makes of beautiful healing Star of David coming together is helping us to eventually come together. Now then, I do want to jump. Oh, actually, it was back to 2026 again. I do actually want to show you some other stuff. So, July 19, 2026. And I have to thank both Rick Levine and Lynn Bell for their talks at the Oprah retreat for alerting me to this date. At this date, we have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto all at 4 degrees in that mini grand trine. So this is also activating all of these degrees in this chart. It's just honestly astounding to me. And again, don't try and get all the detail, but it's crazy. So look, a trine, air trine to Mars and Haumea, the rebirth there. Okay, and then Pluto over here has been on the Jupiter and Uranus and is about to head towards that 6-degree mark where he was in the Uranus discovery chart. Pluto's with Sacred Contracts asteroid, Juno at that point. Neptune is hovering back and forth over that Saturn. So those degrees are being activated again. And then I mentioned already that the Chariklo chart is going to have a Saturn return. And then I promise I will, stop, because I don't want you to I just want you to feel how big the next few years are. Not only these planets changing signs together, the outer planets, and I'm going to include Haumea in that because she just this year, as I record this, 2024, finally moved into Scorpio for good, and Sedna moved into Gemini for good for the first time in 11,406 years, almost. Well, that's her orbit. Anyway, the Saturn return of this chart is coming up in March of 2026. I'm not going to look if there's more than one. So this chart is just being hit. So I just want you to soak up this energy again in this chart and just feel into it. I noticed that Sedna was at 13 Taurus when she was discovered in 1997. She's now in Gemini, but that's the number of the goddess. There's lots of other things I could notice. And her nodes were at the anaretic last liminal degree of the whole zodiac. Oh, in her south node in the sign of birthing, chaos, cosmic soup, her north node in the sign of service, the priestess, giving, meaningful things, all things I talked about with many other things as well. This is just, honestly, just blowing my mind, to be quite honest, just looking at all of this. But so let me stop now and to explain to you why I've tried to mind blow you. I think things that were set in motion in 97 after she was discovered are coming to fruition now. And it may even have started, okay, back when Uranus was discovered. All of these discoveries have brought this new consciousness in, and we're kind of reaching this real peak, okay. And also looking back to 1992, when Chiron passed over the orbit of Saturn and came within and came closest to Earth. Let me just have a look at what happened in 1992. I use a site called onthisday.com, by the way, because it just kind of gives a big overview. It doesn't have everything in. So in 1992, the Maastricht Treaty was signed by 12 countries from the EU to create the EU. The EU is created. That's pretty hot right now, right, as well. And then the Linux and open source operating systems were produced. The internet, which is very Aquarius, as Chiron came in. George Soros Quantum Fund, the word quantum, just began selling larger amounts of pound sterling, helping force the pound out of the ERM the next day, earning him the label the man who broke the Bank of England. Women priests were first ordinated in 1992, and US Marines and allied nations launched an operation in Mogadishu, Somalia, to restore order to the war-torn nation, which was authorized by the UN Security Council. I'm sure there's other things. I'm just trying to prompt memories, okay, for you. Right, so this is just astounding, right? Okay, so the energy that's coming through about Chariklo, I urge you to think into her. There is a free gift on my website that talks about Chariklo in your birth chart. Again, I'll put the link into that because I've worked with Chariklo and done presentations on her. I have Chariklo in Aquarius, very close to Chiron. They move quite well together. Oh, but actually, that's one other thing I do want to mention. All right, so I'm just quickly going to show you one other chart. I promise it will be just one. And let me share. There's my Zoom gone. So, okay, so back to today. So, Chiron and Chariklo were conjunct. Well, they started, oh God, that really fits for me. 1949, which was when NATO was formed. So you can see that was at 5 Sagittarius, which was where Pluto was in the Discovery chart. They had their conjunction, even though we didn't know they were there. Okay. Then I'm just going to whiz forward. So they move very close together. So actually, I'm not going to move forward. I am just going to bring it back to today. They've been moving together really since 1949, but they're kind of moving a little bit apart right now. And on February the 28th, 2028, Chariklo and Chiron. So here's Chiron, 1 Taurus, and Chariklo by that point at 1 Pisces will be in an opening sextile from a cycle that began back in 1949. Again, this is huge, but look where the nodes and the Aquarius energy will be by then, okay? And think back to the Aquarius Leo opposition for her discovery chart. Neptune's still at 5 Aries where Saturn was in that discovery chart. This is just all just blowing my mind. The Centaurs, Andrew Smith, who was one of the speakers in the quantum astrology gathering I'm putting on, I will post a link for that. Please note we're having some tech issues with this email sign-up form, which we cannot understand. If it doesn't get you to work, you could try a different browser. It's working. I'm getting sign-ups, but some people say they can't access it at all. Please keep trying. We'll keep posting the link until it starts on January the 6th. So, you know, you've got lots of time because there's some amazing speakers. But anyway, Andrew Smith calls the Centaurs the Watchers. Sorry, the Walkers. And I always think of that as they've walked in to help us to heal this separation we're in so many ways of masculine, feminine, of you know, rational, irrational, quantum realm, all that kind of stuff, all those opposites that I've talked about a lot of the time. So now I've blown your mind. All I'm really asking you to think about at this point is those degrees. 6 Leo, 6 Aquarius. They are going to be hot, hot, hot. If you have planets or angles or aspects that are aspected by those degrees, the current Mars retrograde is really hitting those degrees. And Mars retrograde in Leo especially speaks to me as the downfall of leaders. Well, already Assad has gone. So, oh, I knew I wanted to pull some cards to tell you where this is going. I'm not going to read from the book. I'm just going to go. This is the Aeon, which is a great age, okay? It looks like Leo, right? So, but this is kind of moving into a new age, in my opinion, and all of this speaks to rebirth. If you look at these embryo figures at the bottom, kind of embryos, okay? You can go read about the card yourself if you like. The Empress sometimes refers to Russia, but no, this is the Venus card. This is the divine feminine rising, as we've talked about on and on. And I know it feels like it's not, but it is. And then peace. I still maintain this will all shake out and we'll move into a time of greater peace than we've had for a long, long time. Much love. I will see you tomorrow when I meet Kathy and Andy again. We're actually going to look at the Tech Bros charts